So good afternoon, everybody. We are here to discuss T.M. Krishna's much-awaited forthcoming book, which has just been released here, A Song for Sebastian and Sons, a brief history of Mridangam makers. But before that, before we enter the discussion, as a journalist, let me try to tell you what is the latest about it. So the book was supposed to be launched day after tomorrow at Chennai's hallowed Kalakshetra. And all the preparations were done much in advance. Everything was ready. But yesterday, that is just 3 days before the scheduled launch, the Kalakshetra Foundation announced that they have cancelled the permission to launch the book there. And the reason that the book was controversial, one. Number two, the book created political, social, or the book would create the political, social, and religious disharmony. Do you need any more evidence that we are living not in 2020 but 1984? The Orwellian year, where every word has a meaning just opposite to that. Love is hate. The ministry of love runs the torture chambers. Peace is war. Ministry of peace conducts the war. And ministry of plenty conducts or deals with shortages and poverty. For the reason is that, the reason I'm saying is that this book was actually trying to bring in some harmony to this world of music. This talks about decades of disharmony, exclusion, marginalization, ostracization of a group of people whose contribution to Carnatic music has been phenomenal. So this book actually, as everything that Krishna does, was trying to bring in inclusion. And they're saying it's disharmony, that it's fomenting disharmony. It's the story of Mridangam makers, the makers of the king of percussion, as he said, Mridangam. So let me ask, as a typical journalist, Krishna about his response, because this is good enough controversy for us to sort of enjoy and relish and see how ridiculous it is. Such a ridiculous joke, but yet I would like to ask Krishna. But before that, let me also ask you that, in a way, aren't you happy that this ban actually vindicates what he is writing? The orthodoxy, the Brahminical orthodoxy has always tried to sort of, silence the Mridangam makers for their caste, for their whatever it is. And now a book comes to, sort of visibilize the invisibilized Mridangam makers. And then they try to invisibilize even the book and the man. So it's so clear. But I would like to ask him whether you're happy also in the heart of hearts about that.
First of all, thank you for making me a participant in your entertainment. Well, as far as I'm concerned, whatever happened yesterday has happened. It's extremely unfortunate. And I say this primarily because I do see this book as a celebration of people, celebration of the makers. It is a celebration of decades of so many generations spread across the 4 states of South India. Is it a complicated book? Yes, it is a complicated book. Is it a book that is going to trouble people belonging to privileged castes, especially the Brahmin caste? Yes, it is going to. Is it uncomfortable? Yes, it's uncomfortable. But I don't see a problem in anything I've said now. Because these are the subjects that we need to grapple with. We need to think about. We need to wonder about. For me, writing this book was also a questioning of myself. So let me not just act as if I'm pointing fingers on just on people. I mean, in the book,
let's
will
come to the book later.
So
I just want
think
your response
that
to
my
Kalakshetra.
response is very simple. Is that it's unfortunate. I believe Kalakshetra lost a wonderful opportunity.
Absolutely.
It's their loss that they are not able to participate in a celebration of Mridangam makers. And I feel sorry that they have backed out. That's it.
Okay. So let's start again. But I would like to introduce. In fact, I don't want to do the customary line of saying that you need no introduction to this audience. I would like to introduce you as a journalist again, because in respect to the in pursuit of a democratic practice, let us respect the minority, perhaps, who wouldn't know about him. So T.M. Krishna, as you know, comes from a family of music connoisseurs. He studied in this famous Jiddu Krishnamurti School of Chennai. I'm saying this because these are important influences in making Krishna what he is. And he started learning Carnatic music at the age of 6, and that too his gurus include very important names like Sitaram Sharma, and of course the Doyen, whom we Trivandrum would like to call our own, the great, who is that? No, I was asking somebody good, Shemangodi Srinivas Iyer. So, he gave his first concert at the age of 12, and in the last 25 to 30 years, he must have given more than 2,500 concerts in and outside the country. And he is a person who, his music, he's already become a legend of our times. He is one of the finest musicians of India today, and in his music resides so many worlds. It is modern and traditional. It is local and global. He times and spaces blend in him. So it's very interesting that he has carved out a niche for himself. But we have had so many great musicians. But what makes Krishna unique is the way he dared to go beyond. He opened the doors which were shut deliberately down for a long time. And in the process, he was actually interrogating the music, Carnatic music world, as well as himself. It was an interrogation on the one side, and it was a kind of an introspection of his own tradition, his own identity, his own background and everything. So in the process of opening the doors, he could actually bring in wind and air into this dark world, which is remaining invisible for us for a long time. And he could actually, to a large extent, cleanse this dark underbelly or whatever it is. So thanks, Krishna, for singing to us, for talking to us, for writing to us, for being bold and beautiful, for being talented and truthful. So we start again about the book. So this particular book.
Thank you.
Thank you. Krishna, the most important book is that, fact about the book is that it's a fascinating book. It's not just a history of, brief history you have mentioned in that, not just a history of Mridangam makers, but it is a sociology of Mridangam makers, the anthropology, the politics, the geography, not to say about the physics, chemistry, biology, engineering, and aesthetics attached to what is Mridangam and how is Mridangam played, who are the players, and what was their background. So the most important question, before that, let me ask a question to this audience. How many of you have heard the name Palakkad Mani Iyer? Thank you. How many of you have heard the name Parland?
My publisher is not allowed to raise her hand.
That is 2 verses, almost 90, 100. So that is the story of this book. This is the story of book. We know Palakkad Mani Iyer, but we don't know Parland, who has made possible the music of Palakkad Mani Iyer, who made his Mridangam. Not just for 1 or 2 years, but throughout life. To be with him, Palakkad Mani Iyer, the great Palakkad Mani Iyer, actually moved over to Tanjavur and stayed. And he took these people along wherever he went. But yet, the story did not come through him. But we had to wait till T.M. Krishna to say about Parlandu and the entire clan of Mridangam makers who remained invisible right until now to at least a large number of people like us. So this is the story of this book. And first of all, this question, I mean, you have said in many interviews that, why you took up this book. Let's start with that.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it before, I'll say it again. The book happened because I realized that I remain caste blind. When I wrote Southern music, Southern music created a lot of brouhaha because of that chapter in about caste in Carnatic music. And when we revisited the chapter for another edition, I suddenly realized that I was caste blind too, because I had completely forgotten everybody but the performers. So what about the makers of instruments was the first thing that hit me. So I actually tried writing one paragraph and plugging it in. And whenever you try to write that kind of a paragraph, you're actually saving your skin. That's what you're actually doing. It's got nothing to do with the book. You realize that you messed up and you want to do this patchwork and then seem politically correct.
Right.
But the problem was I realized I knew nothing about them. I mean, I could write a vague, abstract something. So I resisted, luckily, which is not usually my nature. And I kept quiet for a while and I said, I think this is something I need to begin to investigate.
You wrote about Ishai Vallalar, who
Yes,
was
I
the
spoke
earliest
about the
practitioners.
performers and the marginalization of certain caste groups, the absence of the majority of the population, gender, all that was there. But the makers was not there. And the maker that we see most as vocalist is the Mridangam maker. Yes, you must wonder why it's not the Tambura, but somehow Mridangam is in the forefront. And that is somebody you see often. I mean, you meet a couple of makers. I had met makers because my colleagues used to sometimes bring one or two of them to the concert for last minute fine tuning. I knew few names. I knew Parland. So some legends are there about Parland that you knew. You knew that name, beyond which you didn't know much. So that's when I said, okay, let me try seeing if this is a possible book.
Right.
And it started, 4 years ago, when I started interviewing makers. I started with Selvaraj. He used to be known as Selvam. He's no more, unfortunately.
Okay.
He was the first interview. It went for 2 days, and I'm so glad I did because nobody else has spoken to him.
Let us tell in a few lines who these people are. Actually, Parland and Selvaraj and all these people belong to a large clan of Mridangam makers. Originally, they are the Sebastian the sons of Sebastian in generations.
Just give you a picture. So Mridangam makers exist in different geographies.
Yeah.
But I've used like a central stem of the book, the family that comes from Tanjore. Now, Tanjore became the heart and center of Carnatic music in South India. You had, of course, Trivandrum, you had a few other belts, but Tanjore became that little, Palgad, of course. But in Tanjore, slowly it became where all the great stalwarts were in and around the district, Kumbakonam, Mayavaram, all these areas. So naturally, makers also evolved there. And one family, which is a Dalit Christian family, Sebastian, or actually his name is Sebastian in Tamil. And Sebastian was inspired to take this job by his cousin from Madurai, Ratnam, who said, why are you making towels? You have so many Mridangam players in Tanjore. Switch. The market is better.
Is Madurai Ratnam.
Madurai Ratnam. He's on the cover. The cover is Mr. Madurai Ratnam,
Right.
a very, very handsome man with a Mridangam. So Sebastian changes, starts making the Mridangam. So Sebastian and Sons can be understood two ways, because that family now is the major making family in the city of Chennai. Approximately there are about 25 to 30 makers only in that one family, extended family. So the Sons could be, of course, it was a little play like, you have TVS and Sons, you have all these sons. So the title was a little play on that and said Sebastian and Sons. But son is also not necessarily genetic, because he is the oldest name we are able to trace. This job is unfortunately still controlled by men. So the Sons is also a reference to all the sons from across. So in Peruvamba in Palakkad, it's a Peruvamba's little village. You drive to Peruvamba and you will meet makers. Old, for 4 generations. You will have makers. They make both Chanda and Mridangam. Similarly, in Chennai, in Madras, then there were makers who were of Telugu-speaking origin who live. Again, another cluster of makers in Vijayanagaram, which was again an important little kingdom. Another cluster in Vijayawada. A couple of makers in Trichy, some in Kumbakonam. So you have makers all over. So this book tries to give you a sweep of all their lives, but also about their interactions. This book is not just about the maker and the player, but also in between makers, what all happens, what conversations happen. So I'm just giving you a kind of a sweep of all the characters there are. There are a lot of characters in the book.
Right. Well, Krishna, you have, if you take two representatives who actually tell the story through these two people, it's one is Palakkad Mani Iyer,
Other is Parland.
Other is Parland. Their lives are so intertwined, they're so interdependent. Yet Parland is the hero, and Palakkad Mani Iyer, if not the villain, at least the anti-hero. So I don't want to just try to provoke you, but Palakkad Mani Iyer, he's saying that Palakkad Mani Iyer's magnificence and majesty is indisputable. As the person who redefined Mridangam, who is but at the same time, he's the most important person who, marked that, the Brahmin sort of,
Definitely.
Yeah.
See, if you look at the Mridangam playing before Maniyar's advent in the performance space, they were mainly the Isai Vellalar community. Isai Vellalar were originally not a caste, but a musical group. So they were part of the Devadasis, the Nadaswaram players, the Tawil players, the Mridangam players, the Nattuvangam for Bharatanatyam. They're all one community, more a cultural, musical community. They later, of course, gave themselves the name Isai Vellalar. That's another sociological story. I'll leave that now. But Brahmins rarely played the Mridangam for very obvious reasons. It had hide. It's made of 3 skins. It's made of cow skin, buffalo skin, and goat skin. And obviously, that might have been like one of the Mridangam players themselves say in the book, that must have been the reason why Brahmins did not play. Now, this seems to have changed actually because of the advent of the Marathas. So Tanjore was under the rule of the Marathas. Now, with the Marathas there are 2 traditions, Bhakti Sangeet and of storytelling, called the Naradiya tradition that came with the Marathas when they ruled Tanjore. That was a Brahminical storytelling tradition.
But is the Mridanga itself is a Marathi instrument?
Now, again,
you're saying Tawil was a South Indian
thing. See, Mridanga is, if you really want to go old, the Tannumai is what they say was the Mridanga. Now, the idea of having a shell, having skins on both sides is there in every culture across the globe. There's nothing unique about it. So let's not think that this is something that's come again from 20,000 years old of India or whatever they want to say. This is universal. So, but if you ask me this Mridangam as you see it today, how old is it? I mean, the Mridangam you see today is 100 years old.
Only 100 years
I would say only 100, in the sense of its formation, in terms of the layering, the intricacies that you see. And for that, it is these Mridangam makers who have done this. And I mean, just the innovation involved in creating the sound is fabulous. Absolutely. I mean, they, of course, like most of these knowledge systems, they also speak about it in such casualness. We also treat them with casualness, So it's about 100 years is when this has evolved. So the Maratha tradition, originally, I think once that was a Brahminical storytelling tradition, that needed Mridangam players. That's when I think Brahmins started playing the Mridangam.
Yeah.
So Tanjavur Vaidyanather, who's Palakkad Mani Iyer's guru, was a performer, but more a teacher.
Right.
So the first Brahmin who really knocked down the Isai Vellalar citadel of percussion is Palakkad Mani Iyer. Till then, the Isai Vellalar was always say, I believe, I'll say it in casual Tamil, Papa na kanakavaradu. That is, the Brahmin will not get math.
Right.
Okay? This is apparently something they used to say casually.
You guys,
because for percussion, you need math. But the Isai Vellalar felt the Brahmins were not good enough in math to play the percussion very well. Okay, so...
But the most important rival of Palakkad Mani Iyer, the Pioneers Bhavanapala, he is from Isai Vellalar.
Exactly, but the moment Mani Iyer came, it's a very sociological phenomenon. I mean, nobody needs to do this intentionally, but it just happens naturally. The community then starts. I mean, Malayalis should know. If one Malayali comes, all Malayalis come to that place. So you guys should know, right? You don't do it consciously, but you will be there, right? So even if I'm in Timbuktu, that's a community thing. So imagine the same thing. So you have this first Brahmin who has made his entry. Of course, he's a brilliant player. I mean, his artistry is unquestioned, but he has really come in there.
Calling him the superstar of Mridanga.
He is the superstar. He remains the superstar. Then the whole community starts going around him. naturally, the Isavellalar Mridangist, even if he's a strong contender like Panini, is then moved to the side.
That's right.
Now, this is a reality. And then Maniyar moves to Tanjavur because he believes that Tanjavur, this family of makers, who is introduced to by his guru, Vaidyanathiar, are the best. And that's when the relationship between Parland and Maniyar starts developing.
Okay. So here again,
By
that's
the way, Parland is actually Fernandez,
yeah, right.
just to tell you what the English name is.
You're calling him Palakkad Maniya, you're calling him a superstar, and but at the same time, he has that one thing is that he's actually sort of marginalizing the Ishavella community deliberately or not is another issue, but that's the way things have come around. But in his relationship with Parlan, he's so indebted to him, he's so connected to him, but yet he doesn't even once acknowledge this person in public for whatever reason. I think that's a crux of this story.
It's a very, I find that relationship so complicated. I mean, if you see that last chapter when I try to grapple with emotions,
correct.
That's a very, first I have to say that is an unusual relationship. In fact, the Parlan Maniyar relationship is very different from any other relationship I describe in the book. Because I am still grappling with it. What was exactly Maniyar's feeling to Parland? I don't know. See, one is very clear. Parland was spoken about only after Parland died. Right? Till then, I mean, they knew that he was the best, so they used to compete for his attention. Right? But then there is this very, very clear feudalness that is embedded in caste that is also in play.
Absolutely.
And everybody is a player in it. Maniyar is a player in it, Parland is a player in it, their family is a player. Everybody is negotiating that space in a way. That's the whole problem with caste. That everybody, the person being oppressed, the person who's oppressing, everybody is forced to be a participant.
Right.
If there is no self-reflection. Right. Especially on the person who is the oppressor.
Right.
And therefore this whole thing is happening. But within that, if you notice, there are certain overtures that Maniyar does that seems something that's crossing the boundary. For example, when he makes sure that the urine of Parland is taken for testing every day.
Absolutely.
By somebody from his home. I find that a very unusual action.
And that is taken by another Brahmin.
Yeah, I mean, yes. And that Brahmin is so pissed that he has to take Parland's urine every day for diabetes. Those days, by the way, they check diabetes through urine and not blood. So he used to curse him and say, every morning you want me to go and take that Parland. I don't know what I did in my last janma for having to do this. But I'm saying that is a very interesting complication.
But he wanted Parland to remain alive for his own sake.
I don't know. That's where I'm not very, with this I'm not going to go so clean slate.
Okay.
I think I do detect something, but I also detect Maniyar's, we are interpreting this, right? I also detect an inability in Maniyar being able to transcend that relationship. But I also detect care, which is not just contractual.
Right.
That is the only case where I can say that there is something more that there is there. Because by then Parland was not working.
Okay.
See, by the time he was sick, Parland had not been working for 10 years.
But isn't it common for a feudal system? It's always there are so many of people, people who have remained serfs and slaves for generations have this, emotional kind of complete affection towards their own feudal lords.
I mean, one of the struggles for me in the conversations also
with
the makers was also to, debate that at some level. Because sometimes there is a certain acceptance that this is wonderful.
Yeah, many are saying it's a father-son relationship.
Yeah, and that whole father-son trope is used many times. And sometimes I am debating that with the maker and saying, are you sure this is, I mean, I'm the one who's pushing the pedal and saying, I'm not so convinced by what you're saying. But that's the whole thing about power, right?
Absolutely.
And any kind of power is going to allow for this to happen, which is why it is such a, there were times it's heart-wrenching, actually, at many levels. When you're reading those transcripts, listening to those voices, it's heart-wrenching because what is heart-wrenching is the normalization of it. This is fine. A friend of mine called this morning and he said after reading parts of the book or, knowing the conversations about the maker, he was having a conversation with the maker and the maker telling the maker, okay, where do you get the skin from? Tell me, how is it? He said, you don't need, no, why are you asking all these questions? Don't ask these questions. It's a very interesting response because then the maker is also saying, this is not something you need to know.
Yeah, right.
You, the player, need not know that there is this blood and this gore and this real difficult life. That is my life. And that is what this book is about
Absolutely.
in many levels. You know,
Absolutely.
these different walls that are built because of the way we have a social order, and how where every one of us are participants in it. I'm including myself. I'm an active participant in exactly this. So this is an inquiry of that.
And this invisibilizing, as it were, of the mridangam makers, was it, and what could be the reason? But the political reason, but was it mainly because of the caste or the cow?
Ha.
I mean, that's very
That's a
interesting.
very good question. I don't know. I think I have either or answer. I think it's a play of both. Both play a very important role. Caste is definitely a role. See, you must also just remember that not even that generation, even till about maybe 30 years ago, for a person coming from a Dalit community to have access to a Brahmin's home is itself seen as social mobility. As much as it can be disturbing, it is seen as social mobility. When his neighbors never going to be allowed into the
That's
house.
right.
Here is a man sitting with a Palgat Mani here,
Right.
just across a Mridangam. Mridangam is
That's
there.
right.
This guy has his leg on it like that.
Right. The
And money,
fantastic
and then
photograph in
there's a
that.
photograph where they they hold the mridangam with the leg. By the way, that's the only way they can make it. And just having that proximity, which means a casual conversation happens. Now, all this is seen as caste beyond caste,
Right.
as far as the maker is concerned, right?
Right.
So it is. It's kind of that becomes a very, very complicated game that is being played. And I lost your question. What is your question?
No. The major reason was it
Yeah, so
deliberate.
I think,
casteist-
look, whether caste is deliberate or not, caste is real. That's how I want to put it. It's real. And we all practice it,
Right.
especially people of caste power. Just like, gender discrimination is real.
Right.
Now, are you doing it purposely? Are you doing it unconsciously? No, but you're doing it.
Right.
That's what. So I think here it's a play of both. Then there is the cow. Now,
Exactly.
that's where the big trouble happens.
That's right.
Now, here you have vegetarian mridangis, right? And who many of them can't even share a table, even today,
Right.
many with somebody who's eating non-veg, right? But then you have to play that num on cow's skin, the arachapa, somewhere in between, the chopper right at the conjunction
You
of
have
the
to
two.
touch the skin.
You have no choice. So then there are these multiple negotiations of how you view it. When is it skin? When is it an instrument? Now, that is, see, every caste arrangement has a purification process that allows the person with caste power to engage with it.
Right.
Just like Tayyam. I'll use Tayyam as an example.
right, right.
The individual who does Tayyam, till the day that he takes that Vesham and becomes that
God.
character, he's discriminated against. Now, for that day's performance, when he gets that Avesham and he becomes that character, for those 2 days, any caste will worship the man.
Absolutely.
He's God. But the moment the Vesham is gone,
He's back
he's
again
nobody.
in his place.
We have to understand that.
Yeah.
Now, this is a kind of play. So when does, for example, skin become worshipable? Is the question we are asking. Now, it becomes the moment blood disappears.
Right.
But that's not enough. It also happens when it's cut in a shape, when it becomes a part of the anga of the mridanga.
Okay.
So, when they call it moot or tat, then it's a mridangam element.
Yeah, the cow is invisible again.
Tol pati pesala. If I speak about tol,
Yeah,
then I'm
tol
speaking
is
about
bad.
skin. So, everybody speaks of moot. Moot eppadi irukku. So, when it is moot, it is actually a created element. It has
Right.
multiple skins, it has tonality. So, another important thing for skin to become pure is the notion of sound.
Right.
Let's not forget that. The moment it becomes a resonator of sound, it becomes magical. One maker says in the book, I don't remember where he says it, he says that it gets a life again of its own.
Right.
And the moment that sound emanates, everybody is in heaven.
Right.
What he's saying is exactly this.
Right.
Is that then it's all gone. So for me, all this was a very fascinating process for also thinking about how I think of these things.
Right.
You know,
And another interesting thing is that the way they try to justify, the Palgat Mani tried to justify, he wanted to go to Kanchi Kamakodi Iyer to ask whether it is holy, it's accepted for a Brahmin to touch the skin.
It's
and
okay
then
to basically play on dead cow skin. That's what it's about.
that cow skin. And you can just tell me that about it. And
So,
then he went to Rajaji.
This is an anecdote that was told to me by his own Palgat Maniyar's son. So there was a time when Maniyar had this conflict because he realized that here he is, a conservative person, a pious religious person in his own way, and he depended on a cow being hacked to experience the divine, to put it very simply, right? So I think that must have been quite a struggle. So then he decides to go and ask the Kanchi Pitadipati with this question. Then he feels it's inappropriate to ask such a important person, such a religious head this question. He asks Rajaji. And my big peeve is with Rajaji actually in this whole discourse.
Right.
So Rajaji tells him there is this...
No less Brahmin anyway.
Yeah, there is this saying in Tamil, Nadi Moolam, Rishi Moolam Kekodadu. That's more or less, I'm paraphrasing. Nadi Moolam is the source of a river. Rishi Moolam is the antecedents of a Rishi. It says never ask for the source of a river or the antecedents of a Rishi. Just keep quiet and accept it. And I said, okay, that's so convenient as long as you don't do the job. As long as you're not skinning the cow, you're not looking at it, you can very easily say, forget about it. But the person who does that every day cannot do that. So I think, I think Mani was looking for some way to reconcile his internal debate.
Absolutely. And now another interesting thing that you're talking about why Mridangam makers never made it to be Mridangam players. So that is, and some of those people, they have deliberately decided not to be Mridangam players, and they're, talking about how their, hands became rough and it is impossible for them to be. But beyond that, these questions could be some alibis. But what were the real reason why nobody came? Nobody, made the grade.
Let's be very clear. The classical worlds across the globe are fundamentally discriminative. Okay, whether it's Hindustani music, whether it's Carnatic music, whether it's Western classical music, they are intrinsically discriminated very clearly in their structure. It's either white music. Here it is upper caste music. Even if it's upper caste sonically designed by the men of the upper caste. Okay? So first we have to just come to some kind of an acceptance of this. We can disagree with the nuances, but if you're not going to accept this, then we can't have a conversation, in my opinion. Now, definitely without doubt, caste is a big issue. And that's why we have to remember that caste is not about, it's not a pass, entry pass or a ticket. It's so, it's like twilight. You don't know whether it's day or night. You don't know what colors are coming in the sky. Right. So you don't know what is the reason. So there is an ingrained sense of, I don't belong there. There's an ingrained communication from inside saying, you need to be a certain way to belong here, or just to look at you, or just the lack of attention to you. Now, so therefore, there is this whole environment of pushing the person who doesn't belong away. The environment is emotional, it is psychological, it is aesthetic, and it's done very, very unconsciously. You can ask many people who don't belong to the Carnatic world how they felt when they came to a concert hall. Mm-hmm. Do this experiment for me. They will tell you. They say, my God, I was intimidated. So I said, what happened? Nothing happened. Why were you intimidated? Everybody will first look at that person. Mm-hmm. You look at that person, you know the person doesn't belong. I can detect a person who doesn't belong in an auditorium. Like that. Mm-hmm. How do I know it? I just know it. Don't ask me how I know it. I just know it. Okay. And then what happens is you're automatically telling the person either, what are you doing here? Or then the worst thing happens, condescension. Oh, you listen to Carnatic music? That'll be one question audience will ask. Now that's so intimidating. But you're actually saying, I'm surprised that a person who looks like you, dresses like you, really is interested in this music. So all these messages are passed even to audience members. Right. Now just imagine what happens to people who want to come into the performance stage. It's far more complicated. The classroom will tell you, if at all there is a person from the outside within court, the classroom will tell you. The lack of attention will automatically tell. So there are many of these things that are so ingrained that the teacher says, oh, this guy can't play more than this. Or so automatically there is this, moving away. Now in this book, there is one example in that college of one of the makers. Right. So the college class is happening. The Mridangam needs to be repaired. The teacher calls this boy who's a son of a maker, and asked him to do the job. So when he's telling me this story, I asked him, why did they ask you? So he said, because he knew I knew the job. So I'm arguing with him in the interview. So I'm saying, okay, but how many more people were in the class? He said, 30. I said, was any other person asked to do this? He said, no.
But he knew. The teacher knew.
Teacher was picking him and then teacher told him, it'll take too long for you to learn to play the mridangam. You already have this ability through your hereditary.
Right.
I think you should concentrate on that. Now, what does that mean? And this happens in all our educational institutions, by the way. This is not just about music. This happens in all our educational institutions. When people who we believe the teacher or the professor believes doesn't belong or has come through quota,
Right.
this
They
is
don't know.
exactly what we do. We pass these messages along.
That's right.
And once you pass these messages, you're talking about morale, you're talking about interest, you're talking about so many complicated things.
Yeah, it's kind of a dog whistle
Of
again.
course.
Now, about the women, like, the Dalits, the converted Christians, and women also form.
So I just want to say Christians.
Yeah,
I
you
don't
don't
want
want
to
to
say
say converted.
converted Christians. Because I think using that
Because-
word is, I don't understand what we mean by that. Why do we have to keep saying somebody is converted Christian? Somebody is Christian. You want to call them Christian? They're Christian. That's it.
Yeah.
They're Buddhist, they're Hindu, atheist, whatever. So let's not use that word.
Okay, all right. But that has a political connotation.
Which is
because
exactly why I don't want to use it.
Now, about the women, there are not many women among the Mridangam makers.
None almost.
Yeah, none. But there is one woman, and that too from Kerala, and we have this great, the women's, Kerala was called the
You're the
Penmalayala.
most male chauvinistic state.
Absolutely, I agree.
Give me a break.
But I agree.
Please don't. Yeah,
You know,
thanks.
I'm not saying it's a liberated place.
Thanks
but
for the applause.
I'm saying this woman you're mentioning is from Kerala.
I agree. There I conceded.
Let's take credit for that at least. So Geeta is a skin
skin
specialist, and she's such a wonderfully talented lady. And so you can speak
So
about
Geeta is
again.
amazing. I have to tell you that, like all men, I completely messed up my interview with her first. I say it in the book. I was talking to her senior relative, Kasumani, and I then went into her home. I was standing in the front yard, and I saw skin all over the front yard. And I then leave because something happens, and then I call my wife, and she's like, "You're an idiot. You didn't talk to her. What is wrong with you?" So I
But why didn't you talk to her? Any reason?
I just didn't. Maybe just clean male chauvinism, which I didn't recognize. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
maybe it is that. Maybe I just didn't. I didn't process it, and maybe the fact that I didn't process is it because I was meeting so many men. I still thought of only men as makers, right?
Tamil Nadu is lying so close to Kerala.
Yeah, very highly probable. So I'm not going to deny that. So I rush back in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. By then.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. I did.
Yeah, you're mentioning that.
I called her brother-in-law Rajesh and said, "I'm coming back. Is anybody there?" He said, "Yaaro illa." I said, "Okay, I'll come." So I go back, and I spent the next 45 minutes with Geeta. She's like I was just bowled over by this woman.
Right.
She's about 35. She's her father. They used to live in Coimbatore actually.
Right.
Even now in Coimbatore, there's something called the Appu Tabla and Mridangam shop. And her brother Manigandan is there, and she's from there. And she is like one of the top suppliers of skin in Kerala. She sends it to Koilandi, into Kozhikode, to Trivandrum, to Kochi, everywhere.
Right.
And
And she travels with this. every day.
she has this Muslim man who does the supply of the raw skin. So processing of the skin is a very important part of making the mridangam. And the skin is processed by her. And an amazing lady. I mean, she really was, for me, like a rock star. I mean, and she was, what a wonderful lady she was. And, her difficulties, she just loved her father. And she said, my father never thought that this was wrong. And he told me that I should be like the boy of the house. And I should do this. So I never felt there's anything wrong in this job. And she is married into a family where, she was first helping her husband. Now she is the breadwinner of the family.
Right. And most of these mridangam makers, they are not happy with their next generation taking up this line. And many of them have actually gone out. So what is going to happen in future? Who is going to make our mridangams now?
I don't know. I mean, yeah, but I still think that there will be somebody constantly making it. I don't think you're ever going to have a situation where all of them move away. Now, whether that's good or bad, I don't know how to answer that question.
Right.
I only wish that the relationship changes. I wish that the way mridangam makers are looked at changes, that there is respect. There's one thing we have to be, again, this is very debatable. You can take any line on this. Is it better that nobody does this job and they all find better living?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or is it better that this work itself gets more respect? Now, I don't have a correct answer to this.
Absolutely.
I don't know.
Absolutely.
Now, I am not in their position to answer this dilemma. So I'm not going to answer this dilemma. But there is this dilemma, right? So some of the father is upset that the son is doing MCom and is going to leave.
Yeah.
Somebody else says, no, I don't want my son to be in this profession. Right. Now, the irony is some mridangam makers, when these people want their sons to get an admission in college, says, why do you bother about all that? Just get him in the same job. I'll make sure he gets, I'm his client. Now, that also happens. Yeah. So it's quite a messy pool.
Yeah, in a moment of introspection, you're asking questions to yourself in this book. Whether it is right to probe so much in it. You have your own privileged background. You come from a Brahmin background and upper class background, and you're trying to extract maximum information from these people. You're trying, you're urging, you're pressing. So you're asking yourself whether what I'm doing is right or not.
I've not resolved that. I've not resolved it at all. First of all, I must tell you what I did for this book is completely different from anything I've written before. Until now, I've just ideated from observation. Right? I've seen, I've experienced, I've practiced, and I've engaged with ways of doing things, and I have ideated. That's what I've written. Now, this was completely learning. This was a journalistic work at a very, very basic level. And I have never done anything like that. So for me, it was completely new territory on how do I go. I've been only interviewed. I'm so privileged. I've never interviewed anybody. Fun, just start from there. And so now when it comes to privilege, I have every privilege. Now, where is that line? When are you prying? When are you being insensitive?
And certain makers are showing completely, they're absolutely uninterested in talking to you.
So when can I push? How much can I push? When can I, really push the pedal and say, no, I want to know this. Now, is it fair to say this? I don't know. I don't know. I may have made mistakes in the course of these interviews. I'll be the first, but I don't know. It's a very debatable thing because you, at the same time, want to learn. So are you being very selfish, being insensitive, or is that relationship building? Sometimes the relationship also builds by you pushing. That also happens.
That's right.
When you push, sometimes there is something that cracks and the relationship just goes, it flowers in that few seconds and then you're having a chat.
It happens with the Peruvemba
uncle. It happens with Kasumani. Kasumani did not know why the hell I was there. He's sitting like this. I'll show you how he sat. Oh my God, how am I going to talk to this guy? Such a mallu, man.
Before we open it to the audience, let me ask you one last question also about, you have mentioned about the way mridangam making is going. Not just the people about that, about making mridangams, but how the skin is being discarded for plastic. And you're mentioning the name, the great Shivamani, who is actually...
That was Madhamal's accusation.
Accusations, okay, not yours. So Shivamani is the guy who actually... distancing himself from skin.
According to Madhamal, who is a skin supplier from Ambur. Ambur is very famous for biryani in Tamil Nadu.
Yeah.
And she says this Shivamani came and made everything plastic. Because of him, everything is becoming plastic. Thank God, mridangam is not plastic anymore. But I won't be surprised if that also becomes plastic.
And also about cows eating plastics, which is actually causing...
That's one thing everybody agrees upon.
Right.
Makers, players, everybody.
And you're upsetting the animal lovers in this book very much. You are saying that you have never felt something, bad about seeing all this gore and violence, skinning of cows. And you're going into the intricacies, the gory details about how all this. Of course, it is part of your music, music family or whatever it is. But you're saying that you're not upset at all.
So I have two ways of writing that. I can be politically correct and act like I was so upset by the skinning. I could have done that. Or honestly said what I felt when the abattoir.
Yeah.
I went there expecting to vomit. I went there expecting to come with a headache and say, I just cannot. But none of that happened. It was, for me, surreal at some level because, it was, I can't even describe to you how it is to spend a day at the abattoir, walking, trying, going and selecting some skin here. But thing was, there was a certain reality that was real there about the people there, about what they did. They do this every day. Now, does that make them evil people because they kill a cow every day or skin the cow? Can I judge that person? Can I say that person is animal insensitive? It's like saying a villager who has a goat, and the goat does so many things to their ecosystem, and then the same goat is also consumed. If you speak to Perumal Murugan will talk to you about the love for the goat. And also the fact is that same goat is consumed. Now those are the places where human beings exist, right? In that gap that you can't really reconcile. If that didn't exist, we're all boring human beings. I mean, it's that whole nuance that how do you negotiate that? What is the emotion there? What is happening over there? So for me, going there, it was something totally crazy. My wife didn't believe me when I told her when I came. She said, "You're just lying." I said, "I'm serious." It was like another world. There was many people, we're all having chai. There's blood in hands.
Yeah.
There are cows
Right.
inverted in hooks everywhere. But there was something very normal about everything there, about the people there, that made me fit in, at least in my mind. They saw me as an outsider, of course, but in my mind, that I never came out feeling disgusted or feeling like, God, cows are being killed. And this is a truthful feeling. Now, if this is a wrong feeling, animal activists are most welcome to feel that I shouldn't have felt that way. But this is how I felt. I will say it, this is how I felt. I didn't feel bad. I just felt, what is this world here? There's this smell which you can't explain.
Right.
And there is this color and there is this liquid. Oh, it's crazy.
Okay. So we have 10 minutes before I think it's a major book award announcement that is going to follow this program. So we'll open it for 10 minutes at least, open to the public.
Yes, sir.
For
I think we
questions.
can expect some questions from the audience now.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Thanks for giving such a wonderful session. All I want to ask you is, I listen to you quite often. Even today I listen to you when I'm a small singer. But the point which I want to ask you is, after all this book writing, when you sing, all this will come to your mind or what?
Are you saying it's good or bad that it comes to my mind? I'm just curious.
Only you know about it.
I think it's... Okay, first the process...
you listen to
very
that
much
brother,
like
no?
the writing process
Yeah.
or any creative process. Nothing is consciously coming to your mind when you write.
Okay.
Okay? Nothing is consciously coming to your mind when you sing. During the act of that process.
When you hear the rhythm,
So I'll tell you. You can sit down, by the way. You can sit down. But I can tell you one thing. That this kind of engagement changes the way I immerse myself in the music. Now, this sounds abstract and all heady, but that's how I can answer it. I can't answer it in any other fashion. Because the more I engage with the reality of what I am, and what the mridangam is also what I am, right? Because the sound is part of me. The more I engage with this and more I'm able to grapple with this, not that I have found any answers or solutions, I think that the sound that emanates when I'm in music is far more honest. You may dislike it. That I don't care about.
no.
No,
that's
I'm
fine.
not talking you. I'm saying anybody X. But I really feel that my music has changed in the last 10 years. I know it has changed. How? I don't know. But I know it's changed. And I think if anything, it is only because I have engaged more with the realness of the world around and within me. So I think every one of the experiences I had, every conversation I've had, and there's writing the book itself, the process when you write the book itself, when you grapple with all these voices and they're all, I think has changed the way I listen. So I think I'm glad that I'm doing what I'm doing.
Just one simple question. I'm prying into you now. Why did this happen? When did this happen? This transition for you.
I don't...
I mean, starting from where Brahminical societies are, singers, where you are a singer, you are coming from the same community. You always did this, and at some point there was a transition. Why did it happen? When did it happen?
I think no transition is a eureka moment. I think the eureka moment is actually the recognition of the transition by the individual, if you know what I'm trying to say. So the transition has already happened. So that moment that we talk about is the moment when the individual realized that there's something happening. So it's actually a phase of happening. For me, it happened through a long period of time, right from 2002, 2003, 2004. There were a lot of things changing in the way I perceived my song, the way I perceived what am I doing, what am I singing. I mean, I had mastered the trick of performance. I know how to make you all happy in an evening's concert. It's no big deal. I'm not even being arrogant. I'm being very humble, by the way, when I say that. Because it's seriously no big deal. After a point, if you don't know how to handle an audience, you shouldn't be on stage. Right? So at that point, maybe I was telling myself, come on, this can't be at all. I knew also there's something more to music. Because there were moments in which I was not in control, and that's the time something special was happening. So there was this contestation for me as one, the performer who is completely in charge, playing this game with myself and you. And then there's this guy who's lost charge, and there's something is happening. And I think that is what triggered my questioning about, okay, why am I singing? What is the sound? The moment you start those questions, if you seriously start those questions, then those questions are not airy-fairy questions. They're very real questions. They're questions about you. Okay, so there's something very selfish about this entire process, right? Any human endeavor is actually fundamentally selfish because it's struggle with oneself. So I think it continues to be that. And I'm just glad that I bumped into it by asking that question. And then it starts moving, and then you don't direct it. The only hope is you remain honest. That's all.
I always thought why Carnatic music is not getting out of this religious clutch. Because all the Kirtanams, as the name itself suggests, they are all Hindu devotional songs. So you have done something.
Can you speak in the mic? I can't hear you.
Well, he's asking why all the Kirtanams are
You're
No,
asking-
no,
devotional. That's not his question.
That
Yes.
is not-
That
So
is
what's-
not,
what's
that is
the
not my
question?
question.
Yes.
All Kirtanams are Hindu devotional songs.
Yes.
So you have done something out of it by singing songs like Purambokku and all. Do you intend to take it forward by largely avoiding devotional songs and including more other songs about nature, humans in your concerts?
So I'm not in an atheist agenda here. Okay, I have no such agenda. My agenda is to create contestation. I'm very clear about my agenda. Can I allow Rama to contest himself with a non-believer? Can I allow Porambok to create a little different listening of a song by Shyama Shastri? So what I want to do is I want to create a possibility of many of these voices, and I'm not going to negate any voice, to exist in a similar bowl. And in that listening experience, allow you to float around a bit. You take your position. I'm not going to govern your position. My personal faith position has got nothing to do with this.
But are you an atheist?
I don't want to say, I don't know whether I'm an atheist or a theist.
An agnostic?
No, agnostic is a fraud. That's my personal opinion. Okay, I'm not going to sit on the fence on that one. I really believe I'm a floater. That's the truth.
There are questions to be answered.
I believe I'm a floater. And I don't think I fundamentally, maybe it's also my tendency is I don't like to be labeled as something. It deeply bothers me if you label me as X. Because there could be something that happens to me tomorrow that does not fit in the box. Why bother about it? So I don't know. So I don't believe in so many things, but I experience so many things.
Yeah.
Now, is that faith? I don't know. It's just beautiful. Why bother?
Absolutely.
I don't bother. I'm not going to be bothered by it. Okay? So I'm neither atheist, I'm neither theist. I don't know. So the point I'm trying to say is, for me, all this needs to play together. That's where a beautiful society happens. I'm not going to go to the discussion of rationalism and how rationalism is better for society. That's a different discourse. We'll have that separately. But I think for me as a musician, I want to sing Tyagaraja too. He's a great composer. I've never said I will not sing Tyagaraja. People presume I should not sing Tyagaraja. They tell me not to sing. I don't know why. I don't agree with Tyagaraja many times. That's a different thing altogether. But I will sing Tyagaraja. I think Enduko Pedala is a gorgeous composition. But I will also tell Tyagaraja, maybe you should listen to Porambokku.